People, we're back in the office. It's been a little while since we've been in here, but I'm happy to bring you an episode from here, as well as some other places around the house, because I will be filming this at different times, because we have things coming in this next small batch drop that I don't have yet, which means I'm going to be filming over the course of a couple days in my free time, and the free time is now. As always, we want to give a big thank you to our patrons for supporting this video directly. We want to thank all of you viewing for supporting this video indirectly. And if you are interested in more videos, articles, and exclusive discounts, we would encourage you to head over to our Patreon, patreon.com/LimmyRocco, to see what's on offer. But with that being said, let's get into the video. June, July, midsummer, we have a small batch drop incoming soon, and I wanted to go over not everything in this drop, but a number of interesting things, some of which actually might not even make it to the drop because they may have already sold. I have some people lined up for a few of these items that have agreed to let me film them and talk about them because they are really interesting before they buy them. If they don't, they'll appear in the drop and you'll have an opportunity to buy them. But regardless, we're going to talk about them because they are very interesting. All right, let's start with the smallest thing. This is a Senneh Mat. I actually wrote an article on our Patreon all about this mat. Senneh rugs are some of the most finely, maybe the most finely woven types of Kurdish rugs. And the reason for that is essentially that in the new formed Kurdistan, I think at the beginning of the 19th century, you had all of these Persian aristocracy people move to this new capital of this province within Persia. And you had all of these weavers now trying to weave these more intricate pieces to meet the demand of the Persian aristocracy. And the result was almost a new type of weaving style, especially for Kurds. I think it's kind of agreed on that they became the finest rugs to still use the symmetrical knot. You know, the one that you see most Kurdish rugs and Caucasian rugs using. However, the scale of the design was such that they could get very, very precise. It was like a totally new weaving style had been invented. And I'll tell you, some of these Senneh rugs are beautiful, beautiful. When you become familiar with rugs, you can spot a Senneh from a mile away. It has this quality to it in the way it's woven, because it's unlike anything else out there. Cecil Edwards, in his book, The Persian Carpet, I'm referencing this book again, it's a great book, you should read it. He remarks that towards the middle of the 20th century, all of the old Senneh designs had been completely or almost completely replaced with Hirati designs. And I remember reading that, and whenever I would see Senneh rugs, even older Senneh rugs, all I would see is when they would use the Hirati design. You'll see the Hirati design on tons and tons of Senneh rugs. It is wicked common to see the Hirati pattern either in the spandrels or being used all over the field. Sometimes it's an all-over pattern. And so the Hirati design became ubiquitous with Senneh rugs. So with that in mind, I want you to look at this and ask yourself, what don't you see? And the answer to that question is why I bought this rug. This is a Senneh, and going back to Edwards, he mentions several designs that the Senneh Kurds used to weave. And one of those designs was called the Gol-i-Bulbul, which is this, the flower and bird. Now perhaps you see the flowers and birds. I wasn't sure what to make of this rug at first, and since doing my research, I can see it. But the bird, or birds, in this particular drawing are here. One bird you can kind of see sitting on top of this tree. There's actually a second bird though, which is right here. And in more intricately drawn versions of this rug, this bird is more clear. It's actually a peacock with its feathers, the back feathers, the crown here, and its head here. And in this version, its head is quite diminutive, if not totally gone. Those are the birds. And again, in more intricate versions of this rug, in larger versions of this rug, these birds become more clear. I think the best version that is on the market that I've seen recently is in Peter Papp's gallery. And he has a magnificent, larger version of this rug with an all-over pattern. I think it has silk warps. It's an exquisite version of one of these. This one is a bit more diminutive, and it only shows one section of what would normally be a repeating motif. This sort of Rorschachian trunk with the flowers and bushes displayed on the branches above and the birds down below. So here we have a non-Hirati diminutive Gol-i-Bobol Senneh Mat. And I think that's pretty cool. I think it's pretty unusual to not only find this design being used, but this format is also a little strange, I think. And so I was quick to grab this because it's something that I think belongs with my stuff. The mat size is nice. It's less intimidating than a full rug. This can be thrown on a wall. It could be used on the floor. It's in pretty decent shape. It's been stabilized on both ends, but that is the unusual Senneh Mat. Moving to something a little more rudimentary, but still Kurdish. We'll make that connection. This is an East Anatolian Kurdish rug. Right off the bat, the best thing about this thing is the color. The turquoise in the top and bottom medallions and the cochineal purple that is in the center. I think this is quite an old rug, and especially because it's using this really nice cochineal that has undeniably started to deteriorate. It's old, it's a little beat. It is maybe not the rarest type of these, but for somebody who's interested in East Anatolian things and maybe even collecting them because they are kind of collectible, I think this is a good entry option for one of those. Now this rug is a little wonky. We've discussed why that is before. Nomadic rugs are made in uncontrolled environments, which means they're woven on looms that are basically using found material, which means wood that is not straight, materials that can just be kind of packed up and moved as needed. And so the result of that is that these rugs were not woven straight. They've got curves, you know, they're a little wild, they're a little wonky, but that's cool. I think that's cool. And it gives the rug that much more personality, and you know where it comes from. It comes from a nomadic group that was weaving these things for their home. The best part of rugs like this is looking at the details. And I haven't discovered all the details on this rug, but one thing I want to show you that I think is really cool that I've never seen before is on the bottom, actually. So the bottom of the rug, this is where they started. You can see it's kind of, you know, it's a little tattered, whatever. That's not what we're paying attention to. I want you to look right here. I want you to look at the pile. Do you see anything unusual about any of the pile right here? And actually, let's look at the back. Do you see anything unusual about the pile? Any of these knots? Does anything look off? Do you see this section and this section are brighter? They're actually in the same line, but compare this white to this white. It's brighter, right? When I first looked at this, I thought this area has been repiled. And then I thought, why would they just do that? And why would they just do that? And why is it actually all in a line? Because the same line that these are on, this bright white is on, is also here too, and here. And it extends all the way down this main border is that line. and each of those areas is bright white. So what's happening? That is cotton. The rest of the pile on this rug is wool, except for that one line is cotton. Why? Maybe they ran out of material. Maybe they just needed to continue that one area in cotton because that's all they had. And then they were able to find some more wool. Maybe that's a really, really old repiling job. Like from the same people that made it. Who knows? Who knows why they put, maybe it's just a little bit of personality. But the fact that there is just cotton on this one line for whatever reason is pretty cool. It's really just a tiny detail, a very weird little detail that kind of makes the rug. The color is great, the wonkiness is great, but the fact that that cotton is there kind of blows everything else out of the water, in my opinion. That's a cool thing, and this is a cool East Anatolian Kurdish rug. Here's something else. I am not sure what this is, but you can tell it's a Flatweave. It is a sumac stitch. If you look close, you can kind of see the sumac weave. And you can tell by the back too, it's sort of got that quality to it. It's filthy, it's full of repairs, and I think it's quite old. And I think the repairs are old. And I think maybe even the stains are old. So here's my thought process. Here's an area that we can look at that shows all three. So here are the repairs, 1, 2, 3, and there are more across this thing. But these have been darned. You can tell that by looking with a black light. So if you look at these areas, they look kind of like they were originally done like that, but if you look under a black light, you can see the difference in the new and the old threads. So here, if we look at that one, it looks the same. Under the black light, you can see the difference. Now, I point that out, but if I look closely at these repairs, they just give off a vibe of being very old. They wouldn't have woven this and then would have been able to use the same type of wool to make those repairs anyway, because they may have had this for years and they just tried to match it as best they could. If those repairs were done by the original weaving family or whatever. You have stains too, which I did try to get out, and I'm not like a cleaning extraordinaire, but the stains, I don't know, there's some vibe I get that the stains and the repairs are old. I was talking with one other person about this, and they felt like that could be the case, and that this could be some sort of soffra, which, if you don't know what a soffra is sort of a dining sheet. They're usually flat weaves. They're very intricate and they're usually very decorative, but they were specifically used for spreading on a table when you were eating a meal or you had guests. They were usually for special occasions. So is that what we're dealing with? I don't know, but it kind of, I don't know, there's just a vibe I get from this thing that kind of makes me think that that's the case. Now, what is it? My gut feeling when I first saw it was that it was Shahsevan. Shahsevan are a nomadic tribe from northern Persia. They do make piled rugs, but a lot of what is known of the Shahsevan tribe are flat weaves, mostly like saddlebags and bag faces and mafrosh panels. So the flat weave kind of made me think that. The drawing of the animals is very similar to something that you'd see, I feel like, on a typical Shahsevan piece. But in saying that, I have a piece that I'm pretty sure is Shahsevan. This is from my own collection. This is a small chante, which is a tiny bag. This is less than 1 foot by 1 foot. But Look at the detail in the field. There is a deep precision to this weave. And here you can see the animals. These are sort of what we would see typically on a Chaussevin piece. Something like that. And you can see there are similarities. This sort of 5-boxed motif is also on the other piece. Let's look at that real quick. There it is. Right there. So that's shared. The animals are a little bit different, and I think I was looking up other examples of Chaussevin pieces, and the animals are, some of them look the same, some of them look different. I don't know if these gulls or motifs, I don't know what you would call them, are necessarily exclusive to Chaussevin. What gets me though is that going back to the precision of the Chante bag, this is nothing like that. It's a similar color. It's sort of that undyed sheep's wool. But I don't know, to me the precision is just not there. And I don't know if that's because this is a bigger piece. I don't know if I've ever handled a Chaussevin, if this is Chaussevin, a piece this big. And the other unusual thing are the borders. I don't know if I've seen a Chaussevin piece that uses these. They might. I've just never seen it. But this is a cool, old, dirty thing. I kind of love it. I am getting a piece today that I'm going to talk about. I'm probably going to need to reset the camera, so we're not going to be in the exact same position. But what are you going to do? See? I told you we'd be in different places for this video. So we're upstairs now. And talking about this Southwest Persian area rug. While it's on the floor, we'll shoot some sweet B-roll for you to look at while I talk about this thing. But I've sort of moved away from area rugs. And the exception to that is if they are really cool or there's something about them that really grabs me. And this one did that. And we're gonna get into why, but first, what are we looking at? So Southwest Persia, usually when people in the rug world think of Southwest Persia, they think of very tribal rugs. And these tribal rugs come from different tribes. The most common ones are Qashqai, Khamseh, Luri, Bakhtiari, and Afshar. And the people that are really into Southwest Persian rugs can break those down even further, but for a macro view, that's usually what you're looking at. And what these Southwest Persian tribal rugs have in common is just that. They are much more, we would say, tribal in their design language than their other Persian counterparts. And when I say tribal, what I'm usually doing is separating more tribal nomadic stuff from stuff that was made more towards the city. And usually how that presents itself is tribal rugs will have a bit more geometry, I think, to them, a bit more carefree, wild designs, leaning more zoomorphic, a little less rigid. Another thing that might be considered tribal is the use of gules to distinguish group affiliation through a weaving. And you see that definitely on Qashqai and Khamseh rugs and all their smaller groups. This was sold as a Qashqai. I think it's a Khamseh. And I think what makes me think this is Khamseh is, one, the use of zoomorphic stuff. Khamseh rugs are really known. They have a rug, I think it's more of a trade term called a murgi. Murgi is just, I don't know if it's Farsi or a specific tribal language. I think it literally translates to chicken, and it's rugs that are just filled with bird motifs. And those are usually associated with Khamseh rugs. Khamseh rugs are also a bit more coarsely woven, I think, on the whole, rather than Qashqai rugs. So I'm probably just gonna call this a Khamseh. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say like late 19th century. I could be wrong though, and I'll probably conservatively date it to 1900. So that is a very abbreviated history of Southwest Persian tribal rugs. That is a whole vector of rug research and interest that we don't have time for today, but it's very interesting, and you might want to check it out if this is something that appeals to you. Why do I find this rug so compelling? That's what we're really here for. There are zoomorphic motifs, that's undeniable, but here's the thing. I think towards the early 20th century, probably even 1900, a lot of these rugs, a lot of Khamseh, Qashqai, the Southwest Persian rugs started to become very commercialized. And you would get rugs with these motifs, these tribal motifs, but they were done in an incredibly rigid and, in my opinion, unattractive fashion. It was taking the free-flowing tribal motifs that people really love and constricting them to commercial production, which means they had to be done fast, and a downstream result of things having to be done fast is that they couldn't have a lot of detail. There is a promise of tribalism that just doesn't exist. And when you look at the rugs closely, they become very static. There are still the bones of a Khamseh, but the soul is missing. And in older, more clearly organic Southwest Persian rugs like this, the weaving is brimming with that soul. And so let's just start to talk about why. The most obvious thing your attention is drawn to on a rug like this are the animals. That's undeniable. And it's cool because that's what draws you in. And it should, because those are really visually interesting and stimulating. For example, we'll just start with the obvious one, the lions. You know, the lion was for a long time a sign of regality within Persian society. It used to be on the old Persian flag. I mean, you can go to ruins of Persepolis and see depictions of lions attacking bulls. That's another very old motif, but the use of lions is locked into the Persian weaver's consciousness. And here we have these awesome depictions of these lions. One thing I notice about the lions that is pretty cool, outside of their faces, which have to depict teeth and the tongues, the rest of their bodies have no outlines on them. The color just flows from their body to the field that they're on. And I don't know how true this is, but I have heard when you do see that sort of line work can be indicative of older rugs. That it wasn't until later where a lot of outlines started to occur. And you'll notice outlines on other parts of the rugs, on some of the birds and the other motifs. Outlines do exist, but the fact that the lions are missing that is kind of interesting. One thing I like about the lions at the start of the rug, you can tell this was the start of the rug because their tails are less constricted. There's much more curvature to their tails at the bottom because the weaver had a bit more room to work with, and I think that looks just so great. Once they got to the top, they sort of ran out of room and had to squeeze them in. One of them looks like it got totally cut off, but the bottom ones show what the weavers are really capable of. Let's just briefly talk about birds. I'm not going to talk about every single bird on this rug, there's just too many to talk about, but actually the fact that there are so many distinct birds on this rug is not even the most interesting thing about them. So for example, at this top cream-colored medallion, there are 4 endless knot motifs, and at the bottom one, there are these 2 birds flanking it. Look at these birds, and just look at the depth that the weaver was able to achieve in their drawing. So both the one on the left and the right have a shaded back wing, which kind of shows depth. I think that's really neat. But then look at their feet. The one on the left's right foot, the one that's in the back, looks like it's facing forward. And then its left foot is sort of pointed out and down. And it just creates this really great illusion of something that's alive. And the fact that the bird on the other side of the endless knot is in a different position, its head is faced backwards, they're clearly meant to be sort of the same type of bird, but the weaver has really given a great amount of life to these birds, and it's not just these 2. Once you start looking all over the field and really kind of looking at the details that's when you start to understand, like, oh wow, there's a lot of thought that went into all of the motifs, not just the birds. Like I said, that's the thing that attracts you initially, but how the birds are drawn, the thought that went into them, that's what keeps somebody coming back to a rug like this and finding interest on the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. Daily viewing continues to generate interest, which, if you're gonna live with a rug in your home, is exactly what you want. You want to be able to keep coming back to a rug and discovering new things. And that's why I don't want to give away everything about this rug, because I think a new owner should enjoy everything and continue to find things that I haven't even found. But I point it out because it is important, and it's something that a lot of, from my understanding, Southwest Persian tribal stuff continues to offer people, and why people find them so fascinating. Going back to these two birds, here is the thesis statement of this whole rug. There is a veneer of symmetry, but when you start looking, it's not there. So a macro look at the rug, we see the 3 medallions, you see the trapezoidal figures filling in the field areas between those medallions, and you think to yourself, okay, this is a pretty standard design. But when you look at the details and when you look at the color, that just starts to melt away. That illusion starts to melt away, and you kind of realize that, you know, the design is somewhat symmetrical, but the execution is not. For example, let's look at the lions again. So you look at the lions on either end, and you might notice that their field colors are different. One is this coral, and one is this sort of rusty red, rusty brick. So right away, these are all spandrel. Shouldn't they all be the same color? And they're not. They are different. If you move downwards to the truncated trapezoidal figures filling in the spaces between the medallions, you would expect those to be the same color as the lion above, but they're not. Those shapes have taken on the color of the shape at their 45-degree angle, not at the shape of the one above it. What I mean is that the field of the lion in the upper right-hand corner is a coral. So if we move 45 degrees to this shape between the medallions, this is coral. And then if you move 45 degrees from that shape is coral. And then back down to the lion in the bottom left-hand corner, that's coral. So the color scheme repeats, but at a 45-degree angle, and is sort of mirrored at that direction rather than straight across. Why? What? I mean, obviously it's just because somebody wanted to do that. Not that it was easier, because they had to think about that as they were going. And you can even see where the lines change, where that rusty brick changes to the coral. And so there was thought put into that, which is pretty crazy. In the younger versions, they would have just made the whole field a blanketed color. They wouldn't have bothered doing that, because again, a lot of the soul had left at that point. But something like this, that does exist. And you pick up on that because it was intentional. Another thing that I think was very intentional is taking a look at the ivory main border. Now, one thing about Southwest Persian, especially tribal rugs, is that a lot of their borders will be the same size. So it'll be usually maybe 3 to 4 minor borders. There is no main fat border. And so when you see that, and I think that's kind of what we're looking at on a rug like this, that is copying city rugs. That's a copy of a city aesthetic, having a big border like that. That's just kind of an aside, but that's what we see on that ivory border. It's a bit bigger than the 2 minor borders. It's what's in the ivory border, though, that I think is so interesting. So, first glance, this is a bota encased by some sort of lattice shape. It's a repeating, mirrored, winding bota. When you look, though, at the top border and the bottom border, So the start of the rug and the end of the rug. On many rugs, you would expect that bota to rotate 90 degrees from how it comes up the side, or vice versa. And it doesn't. All these bota are on their side and the hook is coming up the top or the bottom. It never rotates 90 degrees to look like that typical paisley shape. So what's going on? I mean, the other things I've talked about are clearly intentional. So I feel like that is an intentional choice that the weaver made. So why is that? In my opinion, we have to look at the context of the rest of the rug to get the answer. What are we seeing all across this rug? Zoomorphic figures. And so the question then becomes, why wouldn't that theme be extended to the main border? And I don't think it's out of the question to view these, what would typically be seen as bota shape, as a tribal interpretation of those shapes and turning them into avian shapes. Because to me, they look like birds that are in the water. You know, they have their wings behind them, they have their heads popping up and looking around. That's a bird. And I think that's made even more poignant by looking at the bottom and top borders, and occasionally in between these lattice shapes, there are clear swimming avian shapes. And I think that this main border is a reflection of that. I think it's a tribal interpretation of a very city motif, paisley, bota, and they've turned it into something that they're familiar with, something that's them, a bird, and something that is seen across the rest of the rug, something that makes sense with the context of this. Again, very intentional, undeniably cool. If you are looking at this rug every day and you're wanting to find new things, which you do, this type of rug is the type of rug that offers that. And so that's why I picked this rug up, and that's why I think it's so cool. The Southwest Persian Khamseh Area Rug. All right, I literally just got this in the mail today. That's why the camera reset, because I was kind of waiting on this to arrive and it hadn't yet. And now I get to kind of talk about it. Although there isn't really much to talk about. This is just a really attractive runner. This is a, you know what? I don't really know what it is. When I bought it, I thought it was a Hiri's Serapi type thing. I'm wondering if it's Karaja. I don't know. I'll probably list it as like a Karaja area runner, but it's just a really pretty runner. And you know, that's the thing too, is like with stuff like this, stuff that is like more decorative, I tend to leave them out of these videos because they are attractive, but they're kind of difficult to talk about because there's just a sort of this intrinsic, compelling beauty to them. And obviously they're very popular decorative rugs. And this one, you know, it has the wear, it's got the good colors, the really great drawing too. I love the medallions and how they're connected by this sort of vinage. I love the orbs within the border that are being flanked by the leaves. I think this type of border, if I recall correctly, is called like a chintamani or chinatami. I think I've said this before, it sounds Japanese. Chinatami sounds Japanese, so I think it might be chintamani. Somebody can correct me if they know what it is. But really, just great color composition. Just a really solid decorative runner. This is the type of runner you want. Good looking, it needs a good clean, which I'm going to do right after this because it's a beautiful day, but because we're opening stuff up and we're talking about stuff that's gonna be in the next drop, this is one of those things, so figured might as well talk about it. Also, it's skinny. Oh, that's kind of an interesting thing. So I looked at this, right? And I thought to myself, that's gotta have been cut, because that's so skinny. It hasn't. These are the original ends. And you know, a clue that sort of led me to that is, you can see, so there's the main border, that Chintamani border. The minor borders on this rug are very small. They're actually very cool. I love these little checkerboard things, these little checkerboard borders, right? So there are checkerboard borders on either side of that. Now to me, if there had been another outer border, it probably would have been minor. And if that was the case, it most likely would have been repeated on the inside. So you would have minor border, major border, another minor border, and the field. And on this, the minor borders are represented by those checkerboards, the orange and cream. I'm 100% sure that this was the original size, which makes it really cool. It hasn't been cut. It's a skinny runner that is originally like that. And I've handled and had on our store other Karaja runners that were like this, that were made skinny like this. So you know what? Actually, I'm talking to myself now. I'd be pretty comfortable calling this Karaja. But yeah, that's just kind of one interesting thing, that it was originally made this narrow, which, I mean, let's measure it right now. 8 or 9 feet long, kind of the perfect length. And then, yeah, 2'2". Sheesh. 2'2" is a great size. But that is the, probably, Karaja runner. Alright everybody, I just want to say thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting us either directly through the Patreon or indirectly here on YouTube with your views and likes and comments. Anything you want to leave helps the channel. If you're interested in any of these pieces or any future rugs, make sure you sign up to our newsletter at limiroko.com. It's free and you get notified as soon as new rugs hit the store. The pricing video is done filming, so all I have to do now is edit it. It's on the way, so if you want to see that coming up, the Oriental Antique Rug pricing video, subscribe. Anyway, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.